Hello, everyone, and welcome to 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host and producer for this evening, Logan Landers. And joining me, as always, on these Wednesday draft profiles is my man, Mr. Football, Vincent Turner. How you doing this afternoon, Vince?
How you doing this evening, Mr. Logan Landers?
Hey, can't complain, Vince. A beautiful Wednesday. The birds are chirping. I'm ready to talk some football with you on Wednesday, as usual, man. Well, hey, be sure if you guys are watching us live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or if you're listening to our podcast over on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, anywhere you listen to your podcast, thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, share the videos, get our name out there, and I hope you guys enjoy this very special NFL draft profile by a young man by the name of Jaelan Phillips coming out of the University of Miami. So, VT, like we always do, baby, bring up Jaelan Phillips. What do you like about the young man, and how do you think he's going to do in the NFL?
Well, I'm going to tell you about Mr. Phillips. This is a young man that came out of high school in 2017. He was the third-rated best football player in the country from the high school ranks. The only two players that was rated higher than him was Chase Young and Mr. Tour out of the University of Alabama. We know where those two young men are at right now. They're playing in the National Football League. But this is a guy that started at UCLA, had some injuries, had a serious wrist injury, ankle injury, and concussions, and basically gave up football, was out of football for about a year. Then he decided to come back and play the game at the University of Miami. Now, he redshirted in 2018, and what I like about, 2019, he gained 40 pounds when he was redshirting at Miami, and then he got his head together. And then he came out this year and started out as one of the best defensive ends in the country. When you look at him from a defensive end position, outside linebacker position, you like everything about this young man. Versatility, A+. Strength, A+. Length, A+. High motor. That's what I love about him. He's a guy that doesn't give up on plays. The size, 6'5", 266. And I'm just going to go on the record. This is a young man that's probably at least a 4'5" guy from the defensive end position. But when you watch him, he's got everything as an explosive player to be very productive at the defensive end position at the University of Miami. Then he reminds me like all them great D linemen that played in the mid-'80s at the University of Miami. Jerome Brown, Bill Hawkins, Greg Marks, Daniel Stubbs. All those guys were really physical, but they really, really bought it. And then when you look at Mr. Phillips, think about this. I like his pass rushing ability. Look at the bull rush. This year in several games, I saw him lift offensive linemen off the ground, coming with the bull rush. Just go back and look at the film this year, Logan. And there's only one other player that I saw do that, rushing from the outside linebacker position, the defensive end position, and that was a young man out of North Carolina by way of the New York Giants, who I consider the greatest defensive player ever in Lawrence Taylor. But this is a young man that, hey, he's moving up the draft charts. I think he can play in a 4-3. He can play in a 3-4. Everything on the bottom. He's an explosive player. Like I said, in his 1 year at Miami, he had 9 sacks from a production standpoint, 41 tackles. But the thing that separates him than any other players in this draft, all you have to do is put on the Virginia Tech game film. He played Logan. Check this out, young man. He played 75 snaps. Now, 72 snaps out of 75 defensive snaps. He had 2.5 sacks and 5 quarterback pressures. What's that telling me? That he's productive. He's bringing it every play. And then we consider him as the greats of playing at the next level. I call him a poor man's Charles Haley. I consider him a Ricky Jackson. Athletic ability, I consider him a Hugh Green. But most of all, I'm going to take it back where you from. You was born in Douglasville, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're a big-time Georgia fan, correct?
Yep, I'm up there.
Okay. You love the dogs. Don't nobody even know how much you love the dogs. Every football season, this young man said, he getting in my face all this year. You know who he reminds me of, man? From a college standpoint, but he's more athletic. He was more athletic, this guy, but this guy played hard. He reminds me of a David Pollock. Think about it. Guy who came from a guy that was very physical, a guy that came off the edge, a guy that had everything as quiet as the defensive end. I think this young man is going to be a top 10 pick in the first round. I think he's a star on the next level.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got all the tools in there, Vince. I really do think so. The only thing that really kind of worries me, as well as I think a few of the draft scouts, is that injury history that you brought up. He's had a couple of nagging injuries and the concussions as well, which made him retire for a short amount of time back at UCLA. But he's back. They're hoping that he can stay healthy, stay on the field. And I do think that whatever team gets this guy might be getting a steal potentially, because, like I said, the the injury worries might come into play. They might not. But I got three teams here, Vince, like we always do. I got three teams who I think might go with Jaelan Phillips, who might draft him, and who he could help out tremendously in the National Football League, and I'll give my takes on those teams. So the first one that I came up with is the Baltimore Ravens. And the reason I got the Ravens is because they got Matthew Judon as well as Yannick Ngakoue coming up in free agency. Two guys who were very productive this past season, and two guys who are going to be wanting to get a lot of money. The Ravens probably can't sign both of them because we all know they need a little bit of help at the wide receiving position. So at best, they're probably going to be able to only keep one of those guys. Now, look, when you compare both of them, they're both highly impressive athletes. Judon's coming off his second straight Pro Bowl season, great player. And then Ngakoue, he's had 45 sacks, and he's just now 25-26. So both of those guys are dominant pass rushers. Looks like the Ravens are about to lose one of those guys. And I think Jaelan Phillips could come in as a DE, as a defensive end, and come in and potentially, fill that role that they're going to need. The next team I got up on my board, Vincent, I got the New York Giants. They got a lot of guys coming up in free agency who they can't re-sign all of them. Again, like I said, a lot of these teams that I've picked are guys that are going to be leaving in free agency, and we know these teams can't sign them because they got to get better elsewhere. So for the New York Giants, they got Leonard Williams, who had 11.5 sacks coming up. He's a free agent. You got to think that they're going to roll out the Brinks truck, give him a big bag. So that's going to be the key for the Giants. They got to re-sign him. But if they can't, that's going to be a big hole they got to fill if they're not going to re-sign that guy. Jabal Sheard, he's 32. He's the man out, in my opinion. He didn't play too much this season, and he's 32, so he's looking on the outs for the Giants. They also got two guys at the defensive tackle position who are going to be free agents as well. If they were able to slide him over. Like you said, he plays a little bit of linebacker as well, so he could definitely fit in with the Giants there and help them out. And the third team that I have that might get Jaelan Phillips, I got the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings need a little bit of help on defense, and I say that only because they got a lot of free agents coming up, and they got some pieces they need to fill. So Danielle Hunter, as we all know, was one of the best defensive ends in the game. He opted out this past season due to a neck injury. So all the Vikings fans and everyone out there is hoping that that doesn't come back and hinder his performance on the field. So they could maybe get him as a backup to Danielle, or maybe even replace him if he ends up, that neck injury might end up costing him some of his career. We'll have to see. Then you also got Ifeadi Odonobo, who's going to be a free agent. Had a really good 2019 season, had, I believe, 7 sacks. But, he was a little bit of disappointing effort this past season. Only had about 3.5 to 4 sacks. So he might be on his way out of Minnesota. Now they also got Jalen Holmes, who had 0 sacks in 14 games. So those are 3 guys that they're really looking at either re-sign or replacing potentially. And as a team in general, Vincent, they only had 23 sacks. So they're definitely looking to get some more edge pressure and to get some better, get some more hits on the quarterback and get some more sacks. So I also noticed that here I found that the team leader in sacks this past season for the Vikings was Yannick Ngakoue, who I just brought up. He only played in 6 games for the team, Vincent, and he led the team in sacks. So they definitely need a little bit of help at the defensive end position primarily. And I think Jaelan Phillips could definitely end up in any of those 3 teams. But if I had to go with one team I think that he would be the best fit with, though, I would say the Minnesota Vikings would be the best pick for him, for his talent. And I do think he would have a good starting role with the Skull fans out there in Minnesota. So, Vince, what's your final thoughts on Jaelan Phillips, and how do you think he's going to perform in the National Football League in the NFL draft?
Well, I'm going to say it very short and quick here. We just got through watching Super Bowl 55, and we saw how pass rush was very effective in that game. All we need to do is ask Patrick Mahomes how does it feel to have that type of rush all night. And you saw how effective that was in that football game, and really that was the turning point. When I look at Mr. Phillips, like I said, you brought up a good point. The only concern is the injury history. But I'm looking at what he did at Miami, and I'm going to say it one more time. He sat out for 1 year. He went from 220 to about 260, and it didn't seem like that he lost to any type of speed. And like he was a very nimble guy. And when I look at him, and you look at the National Football League, it's all about getting the pressure. The quarterback is the most important position. The second most important position is the edge rusher. And I see Mr. Phillips, if he stay healthy, he be in the likes of Leroy Salmon that played at Tampa Bay, Doug Martin, Chris Doman, who you talking about the Minnesota Vikings, and Robert Porcher, who's a hell of a defensive end for the Detroit Lions. So that being said, Mr. Jaelan Phillips is going to go to the 2021 NFL draft, as the great group Queen says, another one bites the dust. Mr. Phillips is going to be biting offensive linemen in the National Football League. I like the young man, and I think it's going to be a top 10 pick.
Hey, we'll have to see where he ends up. He could very well end up being a top 10 pick for whatever team ends up scooping him up in the NFL draft. Well, hey, if you guys have enjoyed this video today, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We're live every time we do these videos on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Twitch. Also, be sure to go check out our podcast on Apple or Spotify. Just type in 100 yards of football, and you'll see our logo with the ball on the 50-yard line. As usual, we upload videos almost every single day. Go check out some of our older videos, our old draft prospect videos, old game previews, legends interviews. We got all great content over there, so go be sure to check all that out. Well, hey, for my amazing guest, Mr. Football, Vincent Turner, thanks for coming on the show and providing your draft knowledge as always. I've been your host this evening, Logan Landers. We'll be talking to you guys very shortly. See y'all soon.